Education Insider.
Well, so we'll start this off. Who are you? What organization do you work for? What's your role?
So I'm Soncee Partida with Maranatha Christian Schools, and I'm the Director of Development.
Okay. So at Maranatha Christian Schools, what is that role? What does your role look like in the day-to-day?
Well, it depends on the day,
Sure.
but fundraising,
Okay.
capital campaigns, anything, but it can be a broad range. So it might be a small project with a very short-term end, beginning and middle and end.
Yeah.
Or it might be a very long ranging capital campaign goal that's a 3-year project. So
Okay.
it just depends. The great thing about Maranatha Christian Schools is we take it very seriously. So
Sure.
fundraising and capital campaigns development is part of our strategic plan.
Yeah.
So we look long range. So the board, the administration, what we do as far as development is actually part of our strategic plan.
Okay.
So it's a very forward-thinking way of looking at development.
Sure.
We're not just saying, okay, we have to have 4 galas, we have to have 3 basketball shootouts.
Yeah.
It's very strategic.
Okay.
The way we look at it.
Well, give me a sense of like what your team looks like. Is it just you? Do you have a group
Ta-da!
of people? Okay.
Here's the team.
Sure.
But that's not entirely true.
Okay.
I probably at least 5 times a day, I say teamwork makes the dream work.
Okay.
Because I believe that with all my heart and
Yeah.
soul. Because it's not just me.
Mm-hmm.
It's the graphic designer, it's the marketing director,
Sure.
who's also the communications director. And so it's a team of people
Yeah.
that make everything happen. And I'll say this, it's also our fantastic board.
Okay.
It's our school board, it's our church board, it's our parents, it's our students and our teachers. It's the whole team.
Yeah.
So it might just be me in my office,
Sure.
but it's the whole team. So.
Well, you mentioned the board, and I'm just curious, like how involves your board in your day-to-day work and your strategic plan? And
In
all
the day-to-day work, not terribly involved, because they're fantastic. But the strategic plan, very involved.
Okay.
And I think that's what makes it work.
Sure.
Is the wisdom that's involved, the thought that goes into it, the prayer that goes into it,
Yeah.
because we're a Christian school, that's what we do.
Yeah.
So I think when you look at how we approach things, it might be a little bit different because
Okay.
we're going to sit back, we're going to analyze it, we're going to look at it, but when it's time to go, it's go time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm always curious to know, like, how did you get to where you are today? How did you get into philanthropy? I feel like people end up having crazy stories of how they got in there, maybe
It
didn't
is.
plan to.
I
so
know.
I'm curious
Most of
to
us
know.
get into it going, ah, no, right?
Yeah.
So my personal story is probably like everyone else's, a little bit circuitous. My background is journalism.
Okay.
I was a broadcast journalist with NBC, had a career with NBC and a couple of other organizations before I got to this place. So I was even a communications coordinator at another private school.
Sure.
In that role, I worked very closely with development,
Okay.
so was very involved with capital campaigns. If you go even further back in my life, my father had his own company and raised money for churches all over the country.
Oh, okay.
So I grew up hearing all about this my whole life and didn't realize how it was preparing me.
Yeah.
And knew all about fundraising, capital campaigns and everything my whole life.
Yeah.
And heard about my dad going around and raising money and not just that, but making a difference, you know.
Yeah.
And then when he'd go to a city and we were with him, he'd say, we helped this project over here, I knew this pastor over here, we were able to help with this school over here. And it wasn't about, he never talked about the dollar, he always talked about the people.
Sure.
And the project
Yeah.
and what a difference it made. And
Yeah.
that's what I remember. So that was my journey in and how I kind of got there.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's really cool. I'm always curious to know that, I mean, just given the campaign that you've run too, I feel like that's the story that's led you to where you are today.
Yeah,
Influences those things that you're working
Well,
on.
really,
day to
especially
day.
this one, you know, it definitely had an impact. My background in journalism, my background in broadcasting, you know, the saying, you know, in the Bible, for such a time as this, it was definitely influential in what we did.
Yeah.
Because it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so then take us to your campaign. What did you do? What was your goal?
So, Finish the Fields was the campaign.
Yeah.
It was, you know, we had, the thing about the campaign was it was handed to us. We had 9 days to put it together.
Okay.
The goal was to raise 20% of a $3.5 million athletic fields project. So if we could raise that 20%, the board was going to be behind us. We were going to pull the trigger. We were going to go out and do this. By May 1st, you have 9 days to put it together and
ridiculous.
30 days to raise the funds. And we said, let's do it.
Right.
And so in the end, it was a fabulous run, and we ended up raising $400,000 in 40 days. Got it extended a little bit.
It's amazing.
It was incredible. We went completely digital, online, video for the first time. Everything was not the first time we'd used video, but everything was that way for the first time.
Sure.
For us, you know, it was as if we produced it. We did it almost. I reverted back to what I knew, which was I'm going to produce this because I have 9 days. I'm going to really go into it like I break it down. You know how I'm back ending it and producing what I need to do and looking at the elements, and we really attacked it that way.
Yeah.
And that made all the difference for us because we didn't have the luxury of sending out mailers and producing these lovely pieces anymore. That was taking away from us. It worked in our favor.
Sure.
And so we were able to just shotgun it just like we would produce. I was a field producer basically again, and it worked.
Yeah.
And it worked in our favor. And then in the end, the board said, even though we didn't hit that 20% goal, they said, we're behind it. We see what everybody wants here and what we can feel the momentum. And they voted unanimously, and we're moving forward.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So, what goes through your mind when you hear, hey, you have to raise this much money in, or launch a campaign in 9 days?
Yeah,
what happens? What are the things that you said?
A little bit of terror.
Like,
A little bit of, what have I got myself into? It was kind of a slow motion. I heard our superintendent speaking, and we knew that project was coming because it was part of our strategic plan.
Okay.
We knew it was coming. It was out there. We knew it was on the horizon. And I just assumed I'd have the whole summer to get it ready and plan and do this big, beautiful package. And then he said, and we want to launch it at the golf tournament. And I said, okay, we can do it.
This year's golf tournament?
All right.
Yeah.
You mean in 9 days? You got it.
So how do you go? I think this is one of the things that we saw in your campaign that we thought was so cool. That you can turn around a multi-channel, multifaceted campaign that quickly. You're talking about having this strategic plan and then kind of having that upended a little bit to say, like, this is going to happen now. How do you pivot?
I would say this, the strategic plan wasn't upended, it was truncated.
Okay.
So that's where I would kudos to the board, because we don't stray from that.
Sure.
You know, stray from that. We don't get off of that. We always go back to, okay, what are we doing? Why are we doing it? What's our goal here? What's our end goal with what our projects are?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you can get too lost.
Absolutely.
You can, I always joke that, you could buy an ad in the Super Bowl if you wanted to, but do you need to buy an ad in the Super Bowl? No, you don't.
Right.
Because that's not that doesn't accomplish what you need to accomplish.
Yeah.
So, we have our goals, we have our strategic plan, and we're working toward those. We're chipping away at those.
Sure.
And working systematically toward those. So it wasn't necessarily that everything got tossed out the window. It was that it got truncated very quickly.
Yeah, that's a good clarification.
The great thing about this project was that our superintendent literally from that meeting where he said, and I want you to launch it in 9 days, walked with me into the office with the marketing director and the graphic designer and said, and I'm on board with you guys, whatever you need.
Yeah.
And so we had the full support of administration and the board, and they were fabulous.
Yeah.
And of course they didn't just carte blanche approve everything, we worked together.
Sure.
And that's how it happens. Teamwork makes the dream work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Over and over. And not to say everything was like, oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. It was, maybe. Yes. No. There it is.
Yeah.
On everything.
Yeah.
Every piece.
It's cool.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of organizations that have difficulty in aligning like leadership's goals
Right.
with the practicalities of what you're doing today.
Right.
And even trying to bridge that gap of, you might set this broad goal if we want to be here
Sure.
in 10 years, or set the strategic plan even just for a 1 year.
Right.
But then how do you translate that down to what you're doing in the day-to-day to reach that? It
And
seems
it's
like you have a
painful.
good balance.
Yeah, it's
based
a
on what you're saying.
painful process. I'll say that. It's been, for everybody. I'm not just for us. I'm saying for everybody, and I've been through it at multiple organizations.
Yeah.
It is a painful process, and you have to set aside your personal goals, your personal feelings. You have to just set that aside, put it in a box, and everyone has to recognize it's not personal. It's for the good of the organization
Sure.
that you're working with, and you have to look at it long term. Where do we want to be? Who do we want to see ourselves as 10 years down the road?
Yeah.
Is this really going to get us there?
Sure.
And you have to make hard decisions, and you're not going to be popular with everybody.
Yeah.
So that goes to terrific leadership.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when it comes to making those hard decisions, where do you turn to for, insight into, we could do A or we could do B? Do you turn to the data? Do you turn to what helps inform your decision
It
making
depends on
process?
the decision. That's a good question. It depends. I have to stop and think about that. There are some things that I just instinctively have a gut about.
Yeah.
There are some things that you do turn to the data on, and there are some things that you turn to the other expert. If I had a nickel for every time I've said to the graphic designer who is hand in hand with me on this project and should
Yeah.
be sitting right here.
Sure.
Every time I said to him, I'm going to trust your judgment because this is your wheelhouse.
Yeah.
You know this better than I do.
Yeah.
Tell me what you think. And I think we get in the way sometimes, and we want to say, I like this, I like that. That's his wheelhouse.
Right.
He's gonna know better than me. Now, the flip side of that is there are things I know better than him.
Mm-hmm.
And so every now and then he has to trust me.
Sure.
When I say, trust me, you've got to change the font.
Yeah.
And he says, that's not the new font. And I'm saying, I understand that.
Sure.
But our people are going to accept this font better.
Yeah.
And then it works. So there's a give and take, there's a trust. So when you say, what do you go to make decisions? I go to all of it.
Yeah.
First, I go to prayer. And I go to all of it.
Yeah.
And if it's a 9-day project, I go to the coffee pot first.
Yes.
And then I go to all those other things.
That's great.
Yeah.
So just building off that, there's some other questions I want to get to also, but you're talking about trust. How do you go about building that trust within your team? And we'll just start there. Yeah, how do you build that trust within your
It's
team?
interesting because our graphic designer is new. I mean,
Okay.
he's not been there very long at all, and we just all gelled. I think the director of marketing made a terrific hire. It was a good decision. She made a fantastic choice there, and,
Yeah.
and she actually brought me on board. So
Okay.
that was a good, it was a good process. The whole team there. So I think you have to look at who you're bringing on board in the very beginning.
Sure.
And be sensible with who you're bringing onto your team, not just because you like them. Is it really going to be a fit for the whole culture of the team?
Sure.
Is it going to make a difference in the way the team works together? And life experience. What kind of experience do they have?
Yeah.
What can they bring to the table for the future of the organization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you're looking at building teams, I mean, not just in the nonprofit space, but in the for-profit space too.
Right.
There's a difficult challenge that people have of like trying to figure out those, maybe call them intangibles of what makes somebody a good fit. They may have the good experience. They may seem like a really, maybe a good culture fit.
Right.
But oftentimes that doesn't necessarily lead to an employee or a team member that's going to thrive.
True.
So how do you work
True.
through that to bring the right people into your team?
it's hard because here's the thing, we're given the task of working with whoever we have, and especially, you're collaborating with lots of different people at lots of different levels.
Yeah.
In a position like I have, there are many different stakeholders. So I have alumni, I have parents, I have even students to some extent, not a great deal, but you're interacting with.
Yeah.
So board members, all different kinds of different people. I think you have to look for the nugget that everybody's going to bring to the table. And we have to stop discounting people because they're not satisfying what we think they should satisfy us with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me finish the sentence. Because it's like, in my own brain I'm there, but it's because I think everyone is going to bring something to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And it surprises us sometimes,
Sure.
What they can bring. When it's that close working environment, you got to just be careful. And I think you have to be willing to say, this isn't the best fit.
Yeah.
There's a better place for you.
Right.
And sometimes that can be the best decision.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you have a lot of wisdom in that area of team building, trust building,
now
working
wisdom's
with.
just a way of saying you've been around a long time, but I'll take that at my age, so that's good.
That's not what I'm trying to say. Those are not my words.
No, that's okay. Those are mine.
But so given that, and in the context of like nonprofit innovation, how does team building, how does trust building, how does working with it seems like a very valued and respected leadership or board, how does that work into the process of really striving after new ideas and innovative ideas in the nonprofit space?
I think that for us and what we're doing, I think a lot of it has to do with who's in what positions. That's going to fall on, you could just as easily have someone in a position who just is going to do it how they've always done it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. For some organizations, that's going to be just fine. Having one gala a year and having one spring fundraiser a year is just fine.
Sure.
That will work for them. I don't like to operate that way.
Yeah.
I just never have. I'm always going to be gathering. I'm kind of a data junkie as far as learning what's new, learning the latest research, wanting to know what works. Because I think it's always changing and we never know what's going to work. And so I think you have to be innovative. So the way I look at it is, we've got to not just think outside the box, we have to blow up the box.
Yeah.
Because if you don't blow up the box, everyone's going to keep trying to crawl back in the box.
Sure.
That's
a good point.
They're going to keep trying to crawl back in the box. So blow it up, get rid of the box.
Yeah.
Because they keep saying, well, that's the way we did it last year. Well, we've always done this. I'm like, stop. The box isn't there anymore. Quit trying to go back in the box. We're doing it new.
Yeah.
Not for the sake of doing something new.
Sure.
That's the other thing, is there could be a danger of, well, we're doing everything new just because. I'm like, well, but why?
Yeah.
Because you know what? Occasionally, there's something that we've done for 10 years that actually works for 10 years, and we should do it in 11th year.
Yeah.
Because it's killer.
Yeah.
And that's the right thing to do.
That's a good point.
So sometimes that's the right thing.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to think. Sometimes you are the innovator, and maybe keep that when you've blown up the box.
Sure. Yeah. So as you're seeking after innovation, as you're trying to continue to build trust in your teams, you're trying to build teams that can turn on a dime and say, we're going to launch the campaign in 8 days next time.
I'm afraid I'm going to go back and there's going to be a new one, and they're going to say, we need it in 6. Oh no.
So as you're trying to keep doing that and get better and better at that, you're going to face further challenges.
Right.
What do you see as some of the big potential roadblocks or barriers towards growth in the next couple of years?
Well, with this campaign in particular, for us, the barrier was, aside from time, because our time was so truncated, and then also another thing for us was the calendar. I think calendaring is so critical when it comes to development and fundraising. I have a massive calendar, which I'm sure we all do, but calendaring, it's like going back to television, it's like placement of a television show. You know, if you don't have it on the right night, nobody's going to watch it. Well, if you don't have your events in the right place, if you don't have your campaigns in the right place for a calendar, especially a school calendar, it's not going to fly.
Yeah.
So we have to place them in the right spot. This campaign was placed in completely the wrong spot. Completely the wrong spot. We launched it, and then a week later we had to go dark because it was Spiritual Emphasis Week, and then it was Easter, and then everyone went on spring trips.
Yeah.
And so it was just on and on and on. So I think when you're looking at it, you have to look at where you're calendaring it. That's a challenge. You're looking at the time. That's a challenge. A big challenge for us, we're not a big school.
Sure.
We have 913 students right now. That's not 900 families. That's
Right.
students. We have 350 alumni because we're young still. So for us, our pool is small. Not only that, our donors can get a little weary because we go through these big projects,
Yeah.
and then we go through another big project. So if we're not careful, we can wear our donors out. So we have to be conscious of that,
Sure.
of what we're asking of our donors,
Yeah.
and not ask too much, but also not ask too little, because there's a blessing in giving.
Oh, absolutely.
And they want to give,
Yeah.
and they want to be involved,
Yeah.
and so it's a fine line
Yeah.
of knowing and knowing when to blow up the box and when to ask and
Sure.
do all of that. So, but
Let's-
it's great.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate you
sure.
taking the time to do that.
Yeah.
Congratulations
My
again
pleasure.
on
Thank you
winning
so
the
much.
award. We're
Thank
thrilled
you.
about the work that you're doing and
Thank
the campaigns
you.
that you're running and
Thank
what you're doing in the
Well,
future.
it's a team for
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
Congrats again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Optimization inside it, baby.